Welcome, one and all, to Pacific 414 episode review. Excuse me 1 second while I take myself off screen since the screen is flickering. But welcome, one and all, to Pacific 414 episode review. I am your host, Mike, and it's back. Back again. Guess who's back? Chucky's back to terrorize the citizens of Hackensack once again. More specifically, Devin, Jake, and Lexi. And season 2 gets off to a pretty good start. It starts off with a recap of what happened in season 1, leading up to the season finale and affair to Dismember, where pretty much everybody in the movie theater got whacked by Chucky. It also picks up where that same episode left off, with Andy still driving the delivery truck and Tiffany in doll form pointing the gun at him. Well, in the back of the delivery truck, of course, are the good guy dolls that are possessed by Charles Lee Ray's spirit. And 3 of them end up breaking out, and one of them actually doesn't have any hair, and they make a little quip about him not having any hair, and also say to the bald one, "Oh, don't worry, chicks dig bald men." So they're talking, and of course, 2 of the good guy dolls that are possessed by Chucky have butcher knives, and the bald one doesn't, and he says, "Hey, how come I didn't get a knife?" And the first Chucky doll says, "Oh, they were passing them out at orientation." And as they're talking, they're looking into the driver's compartment, and they're looking at the driver, and they're saying, "Hey, that guy looks familiar. Yeah, I don't know, but I really hate him." And they're looking, and they look at each other, and they go, "Does anybody know who that guy is?" And then the first good guy doll says, "Andy." "Andy? Let's get him." So all the good guy dolls that are in the back of the delivery truck stick out their butcher knives and break out of their boxes. And of course, one thing that does happen with those 3 before this happens is Tiffany tells the 3 dolls to get back in their boxes. And of course, that's when the 3 that were already out of their boxes recognize Andy. And Andy is, looking in the rearview mirror. He's got Tiffany pointing the gun at him, and he sees the 3 Chucky dolls out. So Andy starts driving erratically and eventually drives the delivery truck over a cliff. And the delivery truck lands down below on its side. And then the camera pans up with the Chucky dolls that were trying to not make their escape, but they were trying to get out of the delivery truck so they could go after Andy. And you had all these Chucky dolls on top and on the side. And as the truck goes over the cliff, they're all flying, and the camera pans down below where the delivery truck is on its right side. And then it pans back up because on this cliff, there's a cross, and you just hear the explosion. And it causes this cross that was already lit up to glow. And then we cut to our next scene. We see Jake Wheeler for the first time, and he's going to be going to his new adopted family and his new adoptive little brother, Gary. And of course, he and Devin have a few words. They're sad to be departing because they've gotten so close, especially in the last season. They're in love. And what ends up happening is you have Jake going into the back seat of the car, and the car starts pulling away, and Devin's looking on. And then all of a sudden, Devin yells out Jake, and Jake says, "Stop the car, stop the car." So what ends up happening is Jake gets out of the car, starts running toward Devin, and Devin and Jake have an embrace. Then there's a time jump of 6 months. And in that 6 months, we learn that it is now Halloween once again. So it's Halloween night. The camera is focusing on a trick or treater and goes up to the front door of this house. And who should open the front door but Jake Wheeler? And he's in his new adoptive home with his new adoptive little brother, Gary. And this trick or treater is a clown, but he has a red wig. And this clown, even with the makeup, reminds Jake of Chucky. So what Jake ends up doing is he ends up giving the kid the candy once he realizes it's a kid. And after that, the kid leaves. And after the kid leaves, Jake gets a phone call. Jake gets a phone call from somebody from an unknown number. That somebody is asking if Linda's there. No, Tamara, sorry. Is Tamara there? And Jake says, "No, you've got the wrong number." "Oh, I'm sorry." So then he gets another call and same thing. "Is Tamara there?" "No, I just told you. She's not here. You've got the wrong number." And then he gets a FaceTime call from Devin. And Devin says, "I just got a strange call." And what ends up happening is there's a knock at the door. And they end up getting another call from the same unknown call number, but this time it's a FaceTime call. And in the middle perspective of this call, you have Caroline, Lexi's sister. And Lexi open not Lexi, but Caroline opens the front door to this trick or treater. And Caroline says, "What are you supposed to be?" And this trick or treater says, "Oh, I'm the ghost of Christmas past." And then you see the ghost of Christmas past come in front of the camera. And of course, it's somebody with a blanket and, black eyes and a face. But it's at a certain height. And this ghost of Christmas past is someone from Jake, Devin, and Lexi's past. And what the ghost of Christmas past ends up telling Caroline is that he needs to use the bathroom. So he enters the house of the Crosses. Lexi and her sister Caroline and her mother Michelle, the former mayor of Hackensack, and the ghost of Christmas past through the view of the FaceTime call ends up going to Lexi's room where she's got a new boyfriend and they're about to have some Halloween love. And of course, Lexi is also using some drugs to cope with what happened in the last season. So they're seeing this perspective from this unknown call, and they realize that it could only be one person. Only one sick, sadistic person could it be. Chucky. That's right. They realize it's Chucky. They try to text Lexi, but Lexi looks at her phone, flips it over, and goes back to making love. Meanwhile, Devin, who's at his adoptive mother's house, who's over in France, we come to find out, ends up calling 911 and the police arrive. So the police arrive and they come into the premises and they're saying, "We got a call of a break in." And Lexi says, "There was nobody here." And then Caroline is in Lexi's room at the time too, with the police officers there. And Lexi says, "Did you let anybody in the house?" And Caroline says, "The ghost of Christmas past." And Lexi says, "You'll have to excuse my sister, officers. She gets confused and sometimes she lets strange people in without telling me about it." So, as that happens, Lexi's boyfriend is permitted to leave, and Lexi asks the police officers to stay until Michelle Cross, the former mayor of Hackensack, gets in. And I do want to say hello to Phil McCracken. And Phil McCracken says nothing to see here. Mike losing it again. Uh, Phil, I'm talking about season 2 of Chucky, which was called Halloween 2. So what ends up happening is the next thing we see is the Crosses, Lexi, Caroline, and the former mayor of Hackensack, Michelle, are at a psychiatrist's office. And the psychiatrist is asking them how are they coping since the events of what happened into an affair to Dismember, the season 1 finale of Chucky. And everybody's acting like they're, holding up pretty good. And the truth is, they're all still trying to fill in the loss of Mr. Cross. And Caroline is still frightened of the event, especially what happened with Chucky. So the therapist ends up giving Caroline the Bride of Chucky doll. That's right. They tie in the Bride of Chucky where we first meet Tiffany, and Caroline's given that same doll. And what ends up happening is they take the doll home with them. There's a, you know, press conference. Well, not necessarily a press conference, but an interview with a photo shoot. And, they're talking to the reporter and he's asking Caroline, how's she doing? And Caroline says, fine. And the reporter asks, so whatever happened to Chucky? And Michelle Cross, who's, you know, was still trying to act like a politician because she still wants to be in office. And you want to know why she wants to still be in office? It's because the voters of Hackensack, after the events of season 1, recalled her. So she's trying to get in the good favor of the citizens of Hackensack. And she's, doing all these campaign promises and saying, in my next term, it's going to be one strike and you're out. We're not going to have violent crimes like we had in my first term. And as soon as this reporter asks Caroline how she's doing and mentions the fact that Caroline said that Chucky told her in season 1, and they even show that same scene from season 1 where Caroline is at the press conference where Michelle Cross is talking about having everybody come see a classic Frankenstein movie. And that's where her husband and several others, including Junior Wheeler, who was basically the one that everybody blamed for the crimes of the theater, were all killed. Well, as soon as that's brought up, the reporter is kicked out, and Michelle tries to make everything all good. So then what ends up happening is you have Devin and Jake. They're supposed to get together. They can't get together, but they know Chucky's still out there. And Chucky is definitely still out there because the next thing that he ends up doing is he ends up going to Jake's new house where his new adopted brother Gary is, and Gary ends up, you know, taking a liking to Chucky because Chucky's a doll, and Chucky manages to convince Larry that it's okay. So what ends up happening in this episode is Michelle Cross does get upset with Lexi a few times and she has a talking with her. and it leads up to Jake and Devin going to Lexi's house. She's no longer at the mayor's residence with her mother no longer being the mayor. So they go to the house and Devin and Jake ask, "Well, how do you like the house?" And Lexi says it's a downgrade compared to what they had at the mayor's mansion, but it's a home. And Jake notices that Lexi is getting high at the time, and he mentions that. And Lexi comes back. Well, I don't see anybody talking about your chronic anxiety. So, she gives it back, but it's not as mean spirited as it was when you're first introduced to the character last season. It's more like this is my coping mechanism because of the events that happened at that time a year ago. So that's going on. And then all of a sudden, Jake's adoptive brother, Gary, shows up with Chucky in hand, and he's got a bomb. He's got a bomb made of fertilizer, and I can't remember what the other chemical was for the bomb, but he's got a bomb, and Chucky isn't pretending to be a doll at this point. He's got his thumb right on the trigger. He's ready to hit that trigger and use that bomb to blow all three of them up within a 6 feet difference. Within 6 feet, sorry. So what ends up happening is the scene cuts to the living room. You've got Jake, you've got Caroline, you've got Devin, you got Gary, and they're all sitting there on the couch. And Chucky's saying, it's taken a long time to get you three little shits in the same room. You know, I've had other victims that I can find quicker than you three. And while this is going on, Lexi needs another hit. So she takes two tablets. I can't remember what drug it was, but she takes two tablets from the medicine cabinet and she has her razor blade and she starts smashing them and grinding them into powder so she can snort it and get her fix, get her high. And Jake and Devin are trying to text her, say, "Don't come down here. Don't come down here. Chucky's here. Chucky is here. Do not come down." But unfortunately, she's too high to even notice. So when she starts making her way from the upstairs bathroom where she was down the stairs, she starts coming down. She sees Jake in the living room. She sees Devin in the living room. She sees Caroline in the living room, and of course, Gary and Chucky. So she's there. She goes to where the three of them are in the living room, and Chucky's just about to set off the bomb when Devin, who before he left his house, managed to grab his taser that he had when he was at his mother's house before Chucky killed her last season by pushing her down the stairs and breaking her neck and causing her to die instantly. Well, he grabs his taser and zaps Chucky. Chucky flies off and the bomb drops to the floor. But Gary, he probably had to be around maybe 6 or 7, basically around the same age as Alex Vincent's Andy was in the original Child's Play, which the Nerdporial Lifeform and I did talk about the original Child's Play yesterday. So little Gary picks up the bomb, runs to the kitchen, and as he's staring out the window in the kitchen, Chucky jumps from behind and then presses the trigger and the bomb goes off. And unfortunately, it kills Gary. And of course, Jake, Lexi, and Devin are blamed and they're taken back to that psychologist office. And of course, the psychologist says, you two, you three, sorry, should all be in juvie right now. but we're going to give you a little bit of a break. So they send them to a convalescent home for misguided children. And, of course, everything's all happy and gloriful because you actually got some nuns there. And it's basically a rehab for those three. Even though they didn't kill Gary, it was all Chucky's doing. You know, they're in there, and the same place that they've been sent is also the same orphanage. Sorry, it's not a convalescent home, it's an orphanage. But it's the same place where Charles Lee Ray was in his teenage years and started committing the murders for the first time. And that's something that we learned last season in Chucky. And of course, one of the things that they mentioned in this episode is that as far as Andy's body is concerned, when the delivery truck went over the cliff, no body was ever found. They haven't heard from Andy. So that leaves a mystery. Is Andy still alive or is he dead? And Chucky even says, well, you'll find out in a few minutes back at the house. This is before they're at this orphanage, but at the house, Chucky says, you'll find out in a few minutes when you see them in hell. So that makes me think that Andy's still alive, but as far as Kyle, she may not still be alive. Who knows? Who knows? I'll have to go back and watch season one because I don't remember her dying, but that could have been something that happened off screen. So it leaves with the three of them at this same home. And of course, it gives you a hint that Chucky's going to continue to make his move, continue to terrorize the citizens of Hackensack, New Jersey. So overall, I honestly thought this episode wasn't too bad. I really didn't. I mean, it had some parts where, you have to laugh, but so did the Child Play movies. They had those scenes where you just had to laugh. And one thing I learned from watching this series back in season one last year was I can't take this series too seriously. Even the Child's Play movies, you can't take too seriously. So as long as you can go in and, have that mindset with it, you can have fun with the show. And, this episode wasn't too bad. It still continues with Chucky being a downright asshole. I mean, let's face it, Chucky is an asshole. Charles Lee Ray, the Lakeside Killer, Lakeside Strangler, sorry, he's an asshole. And he's continued to be an asshole, and so is Tiffany. So what ends up happening is, it cuts out and then it cuts to the credits. And of course, before the credits, preview for tomorrow night's episode. But I really did enjoy this episode. If I had to give it a rating, I would definitely give it a 3 out of 5. It had some parts that weren't perfect, but it was still worth watching. I still enjoyed it. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, you don't have to take this show seriously. It doesn't take itself seriously. That's the thing. It'll even poke fun at itself. So, this show's aware of itself. It's aware that it's a series about a killer doll. So you can't really dislike the series too much. I mean, yeah, you can. It's your preference, but I enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Wasn't perfect, but the parts that weren't perfect didn't bother me too much. I mean, it wasn't like Devin and Jake's relationship was just brought up this season. They were hinting at it from episode one last year that Devin was into Jake and Jake was into Devin. And, by the end of last season, they were a couple and it led into this episode. So you knew that was coming. And you know that Lexi's still bothered by what happened in an affair to Dismember. And everybody's still suffering from the events. And unfortunately, they're going to still suffer because Chucky's on a rampage. And Chucky's going to get what he wants. So, again, this episode is 3 out of 5 and got no complaints from me. Now, I know last year I was doing live reactions and review to the series, and I'm thinking of continuing that this year. But the thing is, I will probably have to wait till Thursday when I'm actually able to watch the episode live and I have the time to actually do so. So let me go ahead and see what Phil's been saying. And he's saying, wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. Okay. Yay. We got a we got a person watching. Well, okay, Phil. All right. Yeah, you're the person watching. I appreciate it. I've said it many times before. And yes, happy Columbus Day to you. So yeah, 3 out of 5 for episode 1 of season 2 of Chucky. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, Phil McCracken, and to anyone who is lurking. This has been Mike for PACIFIC414 episode reviews. And I will see you Thursday with maybe 1 or 2 streams. It'll either be me doing a short stream of Shadow of the Tomb Raider or a live reaction and review to episode 2 of season 2 of Chucky. So thank you all. Hope you all have yourselves a good night, and I will see you all later.